The wonderful variety of furry, flying, scaly, and venomous creatures that you'll find in the living collection at the Origin Experience all share one thing in common. They've adapted so brilliantly to the Mojave Desert that they can teach us some things about surviving in this challenging environment.
One of the questions we're trying to answer is, how do these animals survive in the desert? How do they get water? How do they survive on, limited resources? How do they survive the heat of the day during the summertime? How do they survive during the cold winter months? Those are really the type of questions we're trying to answer and deliver to our visitors.
And according to zoologist Thomas O'Toole, visitors are eager to see and learn about the reptiles on display.
A big draw are the lizard exhibits that I'm standing in front of here. They're just very personable animals, so very active, and people and children really seem to enjoy them.
Especially at feeding time for the more social lizards, when Thomas sometimes becomes part of the attraction.
The biggest thing is getting an animal transitioned to the captive environment, whether it's the enclosure, feeding. And feeding is usually one of the big things. It's getting them used to the captive diet versus, wild prey.
When he's dealing with a solitary reptile like the Gila monster, Thomas usually likes to keep a professional distance.
Since they spend a majority of their time in their burrows, underground, it's a rare event that you would come across a Gila monster out in the wild. Even though we are experienced, we know how to properly handle them. We want to try to limit as much as possible that hands-on approach.
But on a day when the Gila monster is scheduled for a medical exam, it does need to be handled with extra care.
For the most part, they're very docile creatures. But keep in mind, since they are venomous, people look at them and might think that, oh, this is a slow-moving lizard, I can just pick it up, it's fine. But they can be very quick at times and, from what I've read, a painful bite.
This specimen doesn't seem quite as likely to strike when it's in such good hands and receiving expert care from one of the living collection's regular vets, Dr. Jamie Sullivan. In this case, what they're trying to find out is whether this Gila is actually a she-monster, and only an ultrasound test can tell for sure.
They are not dimorphically different, which means that they look identical, male and females. It's very difficult to tell just by looking at them whether they're one sex versus another. You have to do an ultrasound to actually look for either an ovary or a testes to tell the difference between sex in the species.
And as planned, the ultrasound acts like a window into all the wonders of the inner lizard.
The ultrasound can be used for multiple purposes. Besides just sexing, if we were concerned that there were a mass, we could certainly ultrasound to look for those types of things as well, because we can visualize the organs to see if there are any lumps on the organs that shouldn't be there. We can also look at the heart that way.
A quick look into the Gila monster's other internal organs doesn't distract the team from the serious business of uncovering its sexual identity.
Congratulations, Thomas, it's a boy.
Although the opportunity to observe a Gila monster in this much detail doesn't come around often, you can join us for our regularly scheduled behind-the-scenes tours of the living collection to see how we care for, feed, and study these prized species, and how they can teach us to become successful desert dwellers ourselves.